Hi! Today we will explain the storyline of a movie titled Don't Hang Up, released in 2025. Okay, let's get right to the story. In Tulsa, Oklahoma, Summer attends her friend Nora's wedding reception with two best friends, Vicky and Eva. Although she seems happy to be traveling out of town, Summer feels that her joy is not complete without her boyfriend, Chris, who is in another city because he has the flu. For this reason, Summer and Chris promise to keep in touch with each other through video calls. After chatting briefly with the bride and groom, Summer headed back to her lodgings with Vicky and Eva. They rented a cheap two-story old house. On the way, Vicky boasted that the house was cheap because it was haunted. However, Summer and Eva didn't take Vicky's joke seriously because the house was ordinary, classic in style, and had neighbors on both sides. A few minutes later, the three girls arrived. Joking around, Summer gave Chris a tour of the house. The house had many rooms. The ground floor consisted of two living rooms and a dining room that was directly connected to the kitchen. However, there was a small, mysterious room that was locked. In addition, there were many bedrooms upstairs. Summer showed Chris where her room and Vicky and Eva's rooms were. After the tour, Summer excused herself from Chris to change clothes and rest. Shortly thereafter, Chris rejoined the girls in the living room while they were drinking. In the middle of the conversation, they commented on the reception they had just attended. Then Vicky made a comment that touched on the future of Summer and Chris's relationship. According to Vicky, Summer had always wanted to get married and start a family. However, even after being with Chris, Summer had not yet realized her dream. Patiently, Summer and Chris said that people's circumstances can change. They were now more focused on establishing financial stability first. As a result of this conversation, their mood changed. However, Vicky quickly changed the subject to the locked secret room. She invited Summer and Eva to break into the room so they wouldn't be curious anymore. Vicky did like challenges and adventures. However, her two friends thought it was inappropriate, especially since it wasn't their own house. Vicky then dismissed them and decided to do what she wanted. Sure enough, while they were busy video chatting, they suddenly heard a loud noise. It turned out that Vicky really didn't care and had broken the lock on the room. At first, Summer and Eva were annoyed to see Vicky damaging property, but Vicky continued to enter the room. She found a passage to the basement, which was filled with old belongings of the previous occupants. Inside, there were various unique old items and some filing cabinets. However, neither Summer nor Eva dared to touch those items. Only Vicky dared to open one of the boxes in another room. She saw a cremation urn. Summer and Eva had warned her not to open it because it was rude, but Vicky continued to open it. The urn was just an ordinary cremation urn, containing whole ashes. Vicky was disappointed and sulked because she had hoped to find something more meaningful there. Long story short, it was getting late. Before going to bed, Summer told Chris she was going to take a shower. After that, she continued her video call with Chris while lying in bed. Summer began to express her sadness at being far away from Chris. Chris tried to reassure Summer that he had no choice but to miss their trip. Although worried, Summer promised she would be more patient in their relationship. In the middle of their conversation, the power suddenly went out. Summer went outside for a moment to see if it was just her room that had lost power, but it turned out that all the rooms were dark. While Summer was peeking outside, Chris said he thought he saw something in the bathroom. Not wanting to be scared, Summer finally checked the bathroom. Before she could get over her paranoia, she heard the sound of something falling from another direction. Summer decided to check the rest of the house. Vicky was in her room, apparently asleep and not wanting to be disturbed. On the other hand, Eva was not in her room. Summer then checked downstairs. Rationally, Chris said that maybe Eva was looking for the electrical panel to turn on the lights. Summer was forced to sneak downstairs to check on Eva. Sure enough, Summer saw Eva, who was half-conscious, standing frozen in the small living room. Eva suddenly screamed in fear as if possessed. Summer decided to disconnect the video call for a moment to calm her friend down. Sometime later, Summer and Chris reconnected. Summer said that Eva had been taken care of. She thought Eva was just stressed from the long trip and was now back asleep. Summer decided to look for the electrical panel by herself, which she believed was in the basement. Carefully and accompanied by Chris's voice, Summer finally found the electrical panel. From Summer's front camera, Chris saw someone behind Summer. However, the person disappeared immediately when Summer turned around. Unable to sleep again, Summer continued the conversation in the kitchen. While relaxing, Chris asked where the house was located. Curious, he searched for the house on Google. Apparently, the house had been featured on a paranormal TV show that highlighted haunted and dark historical houses. Summer thought Chris was joking and just wanted to scare her, until Chris showed her the article about the house himself. Still, Summer felt too tired to continue the conversation. Suddenly, the same loud noise was heard from above. Summer immediately rushed to the source of the noise, which was coming from the bathroom. Strangely, her friend did not respond at all when Summer called Eva's name. After breaking in, Eva was seen staring blankly at the bathroom mirror, as if hypnotized and being controlled by someone. Even stranger, Eva did not respond to Summer. She immediately attacked Summer, spoke in a strange language, and then passed out. Finally, with Vicky's help, Eva was returned to her bed. Vicky, who had been awakened by their noisy commotion, asked what was going on. Summer admitted that she didn't understand herself. She just recounted what she had seen earlier and what Eva had done to her. Not wanting to get involved, Vicky turned away and told Summer to go back to sleep. The small argument with Vicky dampened Summer's mood. She decided to continue her phone call with Chris in her room until she fell asleep. Without ending the video call, Summer and Chris then immersed themselves in their own activities. Summer tried to sleep, while Chris continued working on his paper. Without their knowledge, a figure appeared in the darkness of Summer's room. The figure had glowing eyes, and its features were not very clear. Invisibly, the figure climbed onto Summer's bed and dropped her cell phone. Coincidentally, Chris was getting water, so he didn't see what happened. However, when he returned, he noticed something strange about the angle of Summer's camera. Chris called out to Summer until she woke up. Annoyed, Summer, who was half asleep, was forced to wake up again. Grumbling, Summer excused herself to go to the bathroom to pee. Afterwards, they heard strange noises from outside the room again. Panicked, Summer hurriedly grabbed her cell phone to peek into the hallway. Unexpectedly, she heard a sound like heavy footsteps on the stairs, followed by Eva being thrown violently. Without waiting long, she immediately called Vicky and checked on Eva, who was unconscious. Since Eva didn't respond, they carried her to the room and tried to revive her. Thankfully, Eva was still conscious, but her condition was worrying. Vicky immediately called the paramedics. On the other hand, Chris saw the figure with glowing eyes again in another room through Summer's fallen cell phone. He warned Summer to get out of the house immediately. However, Summer was overwhelmed by all the events of that night and instead scolded Chris for constantly telling her to leave the house. A few minutes later, the paramedics arrived to check on Eva. Vicky and Summer couldn't believe the paramedics' statement that Eva's condition was stable and that she had only drunk too much alcohol. Even though Vicky and Summer had explained how Eva had fallen, the paramedics insisted that Eva was just drunk. Therefore, Eva was advised to rest. The next afternoon, Summer continued to update Chris on Eva's condition. She and Vicky had provided the care that Eva needed. By that afternoon, everything was fine. Their landlord, Noah, came to check the house because Summer had contacted him. As they suspected, the landlord was upset. Noah expressed that he felt very disappointed, especially since it was his family's inherited house. Moreover, now he had to spend money to replace the basement door that Vicky had damaged. The man warned them not to mess up the basement. He then went home and reminded the children again not to go into the basement and promised to come back tomorrow to fix the door. After Noah left, the conversation among Vicky, Summer, and Chris continued in the kitchen. Suddenly, a sound of something falling was heard. Sure enough, one of the paintings on the wall had fallen on the breakable items on the table. Not only that, strange occurrences from the basement also happened again. The door opened by itself, and there was the sound of rushing water like a leaking faucet. Apparently, the sink in the basement had turned on by itself. Yet there was no one there. As if that wasn't enough, the cremation urn tipped over as if someone had intentionally bumped into it, causing the ashes to scatter everywhere. Feeling very annoyed, Summer cleaned up the remaining ashes and put them back in the urn while accusing Vicky. Not accepting the random accusation, Vicky went up first, leaving Summer in a hassle. Chris decided to discuss the anomaly he had talked about with Summer to Vicky. However, Vicky felt skeptical upon hearing Chris's ghost story, which connected to what she saw last night through Summer's phone. Vicky called Chris stupid for believing in such conspiracy theories. Chris pleaded with Summer to at least check the history of the house. According to his research online, the family that previously lived in that house was killed in a massacre in 1921. At that time, Tulsa was known to have many black residents who were seen as a threat to white citizens. Chris feared that the spirits of the family who had died there were still haunting the house, especially after finding mysterious ashes. Although reluctant, Summer agreed to fulfill Chris's request. However, she asked him to check on Eva first because she had a bad feeling. As Chris had anticipated, Eva's room was empty and messy. The entire walls of her room were covered with writings in a foreign language that they did not understand. Not to mention, on the other side, the bathroom door was suddenly slammed. When Summer approached, Eva was already submerged in the bathtub, almost dead. Fortunately, Vicky and Summer arrived just in time. Eva claimed she had a nightmare, but her words were unclear and she suddenly harmed herself. This instantly made her two friends panic. Eventually, they decided to call an ambulance to take Eva to the hospital. Vicky and Summer decided to stay home and wait for news from the doctor. Chris said they should go and take care of Eva instead of staying home. Chris was sure there was something evil in that house, but Vicky kept ignoring Chris's story. Just a moment after that small argument, suddenly Vicky gasped. In the distance, she saw a creepy man covered in blood. The man moved quickly towards Vicky. In a panic, she and Summer looked for a way out. Unfortunately, the power was out. The front door was locked and the windows couldn't be opened. With only the light from Summer's phone, they searched for another way. From above, a figure hanging from the ceiling appeared to block Summer's path. As a result, she fled in another direction. During their escape, Vicky was dragged into another room by a mysterious figure. Summer tried to reach her, but was too slow. The room was locked from the inside. Resigned, Summer felt she had to go back downstairs, where music suddenly played and there was another shadow on the wall. Chris had already tried to tell Summer to hide in a safe place, but Summer ignored it. Summer kept walking, following her heart, until she entered a small corridor that led to the basement. She thought she heard someone's footsteps and decided to greet that person. Unexpectedly, it was Eva, who should have been at the hospital. In the archive room, Eva showed a photo of a family that once lived in the house, a couple and their two children. Eva said that they all died in a massacre and wanted justice. She repeated that word over and over, but did not explain what kind of justice she meant. In that room, another strangeness revealed itself. From the wall, blood spread, and a hand emerged from behind the wall. Fearfully, Summer led Eva out of the basement, while a horrific figure crawled along the wall pursuing them. At midnight, the wall clock chimed exactly as Summer managed to escape from the basement. She told Eva to wait in the living room, while she insisted she wouldn't leave without Vicky. Determined, she went around to every open room in the house calling out for Vicky. Without wasting any time, she found Vicky in the corner of her room. Calmly, Summer woke Vicky and urged her to get up quickly. Keeping watch to ensure no one was monitoring them, Summer and Vicky went down to pick up Eva. However, Eva was not in the living room. After searching around the house, they did not find Eva but encountered the spirits of the family, namely the mother and her little daughter. The mother whispered wanting justice, which of course could not be understood immediately by Summer and Vicky. In their confusion, they found themselves locked in the family room after the spirit disappeared. Summer tried to stay calm and think of a solution. She recalled what the woman wanted, justice. To Chris, she confirmed that there were 3 victims who died in the tragedy, but there were 4 family members in the photo. Until she realized that the justice referred to was a name, Justice. Chris helped Summer research about the family on the internet. According to Chris's search, the father, mother, and their daughter died in different ways. However, one son, who was reported shot, has not been found. Summer concluded that the spirits were searching for their son named Justice. Amidst the confusion, time rewound to the night of the incident. Outside, the sounds of banging and gunfire could be heard. Not long after, Noah arrived. He claimed that the neighbors reported hearing loud noises as if people were partying in their rental house. Noah was immediately confused, seeing the house in complete darkness, only lit by Summer's cell phone. Summer tried to tell the truth to the man, but Noah just laughed at her. He assumed Summer was taken in by the lies about the history of the house on the internet. He insisted they should turn on the electricity first. Summer pleaded for Noah to believe her, mentioning the name Justice. The man was silent because he didn't expect Summer to know that name. However, he ignored Summer. Summer followed him to the basement until the electricity came back on. Noah was stunned to see the chaotic condition of his Rubana and threatened to report the girls to the police. However, Summer tries to get the man to talk nicely. Moreover, it is related to Noah's family. Thankfully, Noah listens to Summer and follows her upstairs, showing him the strange Creole writing that the man understands. The writing on the wall tells the same truth, namely that Justice was kidnapped and shot. The man was at a loss for words with what he saw. At first, Noah was still hesitant to help Summer solve the mystery. However, after seeing the spirits of the man and woman behind him, Noah decided to call his parents. Now he believes that the ghost stories circulating on the internet are mostly true, except for Justice. Justice is his father and he is still alive. After everything was settled, Summer and the man officially got to know each other. Noah said his parents found it hard to hear the truth, but they were willing to come. On the other hand, Summer didn't want to go home immediately before witnessing Justice's arrival for herself. The next day, the elderly Justice came with his wife. The spirits of Justice's parents and younger sister welcomed them with smiles full of longing. Justice didn't expect to be reunited with his family like that. A few hours later, Summer, Vicky, and Eva packed up to leave the house. However, the darkness had not completely left Eva, who looked pale and had a blank stare.